Facilities, Beaufort County, Monday, September 19th. And first of all, procedurally, we've gone beyond the number of people that we can have in the room for the fire code. So there's room for about 15 people in the executive conference room. You can watch it on TV, the door will be open. And we can live with one row of people that have their backs to the wall, but I'd ask anybody that can't do those two things to actually move into the hall and you can watch the meeting from there. Otherwise, we're in violation of the fire codes. So I'll wait for a second for people to do that, and apologize we can't have, but it's good to have all of you here.
And they're not David, how are you?
Some of you actually find it very comfortable in the executive conference room. If not, we can go over there and you all can meet here. Okay, we don't have single row across the back. I hate to do this, but let's have those folks move out, please.
We can adjourn the meeting.
Okay, if you would rise, join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item is the approval of the agenda, and a couple of comments about it, if there's no objection. What I would like to do is take the Beaufort High Access piece first, since so many of you are here for that, in deference to your time. And what I'd like to do is actually tee up the discussion, get a few preliminary comments from council, and then have the public discussion on that particular item. And I think that will give a way for people that are speaking to kind of get a sense of what's on the table and where we're headed, and that may help with the comments. Then we'll come back and conclude our discussion and take any action that we think we need to take. And I'll do a similar thing for the 278, and since people are only here for those two items, we'll have the public comments associated with each of those at the time that we discuss them. So with that in mind, I'd look for approval of the agenda, a motion.
Did you want to move 12 up to make it number 9? Or
Yes.
No, I'm going to leave it at the end. It'll be quick. I mean, the other ones are small. It's only one person here. So I'm looking for approval of the agenda.
So move, sir.
Thank you. Is there a
I'll make
second?
a second, Mr.
Any
Chairman.
further discussion? Seeing none, it stands approved without objection. The next item would be the approval of the minutes from our September 22nd. Look for a motion.
So moved.
Okay, second?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Any discussion, corrections? Seeing none, stands approved without objection. We'll skip down to item number 8 now, which is the high school access piece, which you're all here for, or at least most of you are. And let me give a little background on, I think, where we are, and hopefully this will help focus our discussion. It kind of goes like this. It's something that's been hanging around for a long time. It was suggested that we take it up at our summer public facilities meetings, and so we had 2 during the summer. And the first one, there was a lot of discussion, and we zeroed in on 2 alternatives, which were called 4 and 5, as the ones that seemed to be the most plausible or recommended at that point in time. And those kind of came in from the southeast part off of, I guess it's Ladies Island Drive, to the high school complex. When we got to our second meeting in the summer, which was in late August, there was a lot of pushback from the folks in that area relating to having more school traffic coming through there and the potential impact that it would have on Crystal Lake Park. So that led to a discussion at that meeting about whether it made sense to go with what became known as Alternative Zero. And Alternative Zero was the one that would have taken the 3-lane Sea Island Parkway to 4 lanes. And tremendous amount of pushback from that also. And I understand some of that. I actually drove it today to look at it, and clearly, if it gets widened, it starts to infringe on businesses on either side, and so on. And also, there's an argument that said you've got a 2-lane bridge going to 4 lanes, and so on. So we as council clearly understand the amount of pushback that there has been to that so-called Alternative Zero, which would widen from the 3 to the 4 lanes. Now, if we look at the money as I understand it, if we had done 4 and 5, the amount of money that was needed was in the range of, I think, $7-8 million, something like that, whichever one we might have done. The numbers that I've heard, if we were doing Alternative Zero, starts to be in the $12 to $15 million type of number, which, as we were leading up to this meeting, it kind of said, if we don't have support for any of the options, a significant support, and we have a great deal of pushback from options that are on the table, and they're expensive, and we don't have the money at this point to do it, the better thing for us to do may be to do none of the alternatives, but take up the individual improvements on kind of a running basis like we would normally do in the course of our business. So, for example, there are certain things that are planned or would be done anyway, and there's certain things that tie into the, I guess, the Ladies Island plan, a portion of which is funded by the money from the referendum in 2018. So, to me, I think where we're kind of headed is a debate of whether or not we should probably not do any of the ones, but take the individual actions up in due course as we go forward. Now, let me call on Jared, if I might, at this point in time, to build on that a little bit, if you can, as to if we didn't do anything, what are the kind of things that would be happening as we went forward at this point in time?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I'm trying not to infect the speaker, so anyhow, I'll try to stay back from it and talk into it as much as I can. So, option 0, that was sort of the option that came up last PFC meeting in August. And really we call it 0, but it had been looked at a little bit prior to as kind of Alternative 1 with a few modifications. Staff was tasked with at that time to come back and say, okay, if we widen it to the north, there's a certain amount of costs and impacts. If we widen it to the south to make the 4th lane, there's a different amount of impacts and costs. Or if we split the widen to the north and the south. So we kind of have 3 iterations of that same alternative. So we've since done that homework. We've got the costs and the impacts, and Jennifer Bragg, she'll be here in just a second behind me. She's our program manager for the sales tax program and working with our design consultants on the project. She'll be able to discuss a little bit more detail what those are. If we choose to move forward with none of the above options, that's not to say that, and that's really specifically from the bridge, Woods Memorial Bridge to Ladies Island Drive to the Walgreens intersection. So there would be no traffic improvements through that section and no additional access improvements to the high school. So no coming out to Ladies Island Drive on the southeast portion if we did none of the above options. That's not to say that we still can't do some pedestrian and access pathway accommodations, some potential street aesthetics, and even underground and power for resiliency and different things of that nature. So Then the rest of the project would remain, so the improvements to 4-lane the highway on 21 all the way from the Ladies Island intersection at Walgreens out past Walmart, that would still remain, as well as the improvements on north and south of 21 on Sam's Point, from Miller Drive West down to Rue du Bois. So those improvements would remain. Also, the additional access projects, the Hazel Farm and Gay, as well as the middle school improvements, the airport frontage road improvement, and the Sunset and Miller Drive, those improvements, all that would remain. So what we're really talking about is whether we do anything on that one section from Walgreens back to the bridge, and provide any additional access to the school as it is today. So that's the information we have teed up. And if you'd like, I can invite Jennifer and she can kind of give you the details of those analysis that we did.
Sure, I think it'd be great. It's always good to have Jennifer with us. One of our stars.
Hello. So once again, we've got a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm gonna kind of walk you through what Jared just discussed with the PowerPoint. And it's gonna start off with the 21 corridor, but there's a background once again. If you click on about the third slide down, the overall map, go up one slide. Go up 2 slides. There we go. So as Jared mentioned, these were all the original projects that were part of the Ladies Island corridor traffic improvements on the ballot referendum. So again, it's the 2 mainline corridors of US 21 Business, US 21 Sea Island Parkway and Ladies Island Drive, and then the SC 802 corridor, as well as the access roads. So then from there, and I'm gonna try and not confuse you, but maybe confuse you a little bit. So alternate 1 is actually what's in the scope right now of keeping US 21 Business as the 3-lane section with some access management from the Woods Memorial Bridge up to the main intersection of SC 802 and 21. With this one project, there are actually, and we've accounted for a couple of displacements. These 3 displacements would actually be on all improvements here. The reason being is there's a property at the corner of Yeoman's and Sea Island Parkway. It's actually in the present right-of-way now. So I've taken the assumption that when it goes through the process in coordination with SCDOT may require them to be relocated regardless. Just because it shows up on the plans that way, it shows up in the county GIS, shows up on DOT's existing plans that way. So that's included regardless. And then there's another property at the corner of Sam's Point and Miller Drive West that between the access road and the mainline improvements, it's hit regardless. So those 3 are across the board in all of these. So with this, what we concentrated on was obviously between Woods Memorial Bridge to Sam's Point, but we did look at the right-of-way on all of it. We looked at the project cost for all of it, and all of it being Ladies Island Drive, Sam's Point, and Sea Island Parkway from the main intersection going east. So alternates 2 through 4 actually look at widening the corridor from Woods Memorial Bridge to Sam's Point. Alternate, if you'll click on the next slide, alternate 2. This one actually considered doing more of the widening to the north and showing the potential displacements here. So again, it's you've got some potential displacements, access management standards being incorporated. Alternate 3, which is the next line down. That one looks at widening about the center line. So when you widen about the center line, we get no cost savings from construction. What I mean by that is you're hitting the curb and gutter, drainage both sides of the road. So when I get to the end and you see a slight difference in why this one's a little bit more expensive is because, well, we're replacing all the curb and gutter, all the drainage both sides of the road. Alternate 4 looked at widening to the south side more. And again, it shows up. Now, one thing we did look at when we got into the estimates We looked at potential parking spaces that get removed regardless. All of them have it, even alternate one, because even doing the bicycle and pedestrian paths, the improvements for those, we're still hitting some parking places regardless. So we still had to consider that. So then these are some pros and cons between the various alternate 1 compared to alternates 2 through 4. So with alternate 1, it actually was considered originally to be constructed and not increase the laneage in that section because we were going to do Beaufort High School. So we were actually going to remove the high school traffic from this section of the corridor with alternate 1. So the benefit for it would be if the high school traffic is realigned on a different route, then we would convert that entrance to right in, right out. School traffic is shifted from 21. The business section, again, we've minimized displacements here. We've got some access management standards within, of course, we're increasing the bicycle and pedestrian facilities in this. If Beaufort High School is not realigned, and we still proceed with this, we're already over capacity for the section, and the congestion's going to increase. We keep the traffic here, and then we don't have any additional connectivity for this section. So 2 through 4, we're not doing the Beaufort High School realignment. We're going to keep the traffic for the school within this segment from Woods Memorial Bridge to 802. We've got increased access management throughout the corridor. We're still improving the bicycle and pedestrian facilities, but we've increased displacements because we are going to impact more buildings and businesses here. And you'll see later on why there's a range between 5 to 9 for this. So, and then again, we don't have the increased connectivity with another road by eliminating the realignment. So with the realignment, again, this is the school attendance area. It's all of Ladies Island, all of the outer sea islands, plus a portion of the town of Port Royal. These were all the options we considered. And we've kind of narrowed it down to what you've already seen before, which is 4 and 5. 4 would be a brand new roadway that comes across from Yeoman's over to Ladies Island Drive. It aligns with Hazel Farm Road, which would then connect with Gay back over to Sea Island Parkway. We create one intersection. It brings the traffic in for the school directly to the school. We actually still create improvement along a portion of Geechee Road back to the school's entrance, back to Sea Island, to the business section of 21. But it's converted to right in, right out on 21 business. We are doing bicycle and pedestrian facilities on all of these, so we're improving the connectivity there to the school for any kids that need to walk. And the other component is we've tried to minimize impacts to Crystal Lake Parks, but we are still getting one parcel there, and where you have the curse right there. So all the other parcels we are not touching except that one. So then alternate 5, which everybody has said, let's get over to Rue du Bois. This actually looked at creating a smoother transition from Carolyn Drive to Rue du Bois, creating more of a through movement and the connectivity to Hazel Farm Road back around. It's a longer project. We're also still hitting Crystal Lake Park. And at Crystal Lake Park, we're also impacting the building with it. So this one actually has more impacts. We're relocating residential properties also with it, and more impacts to the residential properties in this area. So from there, where are we with project cost? And
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure, Brian.
Chairman, can you go back one slide, please? Brad, thank you. You see how you run that red line right over the top of the Crystal Lake Park Welcome Center? Why couldn't you move that to the existing intersection and have it moved down a little bit? Why does the new Rue du Bois entrance have to be there instead of where it currently is?
We're creating that smoother transition for a single intersection. If we stay with existing Rue du Bois trying to come across, we could potentially impact the bank. Existing Carolyn Drive going around the football field, if you stay on the existing roadway, it's two 90-degree curves to a T intersection. So we're trying to make the alignment smoother, because if you've got opposing traffic coming up and putting more traffic from Hazel Farm down there, you want to make sure it's a very smooth transition there.
Right, but I'm looking at the existing structure of those roadways, and Rue du Bois is relatively close. If you right where your cursor is, if you move that directly across that Ladies Island Drive, there's a roadway there already.
There is, but we also need to look at the intersection angle of how it's crossing Ladies Island Drive to meet SCDOT standards. So you've got an angle with that that's going one direction. We're trying to take traffic the opposite direction. So your curvature with the alignment, basically you may as well stay with the 90-degree curves with Carolyn Drive to Rue du Bois in a stop condition because of it. I don't remember the radius of that, but it's within the standards to make that transition and make it smooth coming around. Otherwise, you're basically bringing it up and you're with a 90-degree curve with all the traffic. And then you also are, you don't have clear line of sight with the traffic signal.
All right.
Jennifer, take a second.
Yes.
Sorry. All right, thank you, Jennifer. I'm not sure I understand, but I think we'll move on.
I'm not driving the mouse. Jared's kind of trying to drive over there, and it's kind of hard to explain virtually here.
I guess, Jennifer, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do you see where the red line from Carolyn Drive comes around, makes a sweeping left-hand turn towards Ladies Island Drive? Why couldn't we just extend through that one property? We're already taking fully half of it. Extend it straight down to Rue du Bois and make a left-hand turn onto Rue du Bois and then go straight across. We're preserving, the momentum of traffic. I can see your concern about crossing over at a relatively odd angle, but I think it preserves an asset that we've already grown to love, the Crystal Lake Park Welcome Center and the whole park path, et cetera.
Right. So that's right now. Rue du Bois is actually a skewed intersection, and what you're talking about with this is, again, you're being skewed this way for traffic that's trying to go this way. So then when you try and put a curve in to make it the smooth transition, now we're not going to be in compliance with standards between the curve to that intersection. At the same moment, we're trying to go the opposite direction back around the Hazel Farm. So you've got to work all of it together in there. I understand what you're saying with, okay, we're almost there, but the more we bring it away, the worse it actually gets on meeting standards. So we're in compliance with the angle crossing Ladies Island Drive and bringing these two, plus with those curves in the distance to that new intersection.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I understand what you're telling me now.
Okay. Any other questions on anything here?
So if we did nothing Basically, would that be dropping back to the Ladies Island plan and alternative one for the most part?
So alternative one, and I can't read the numbers here. Alternative one is actually, I put it on the far right next to the Beaufort High School because I can't read that either. I'm going to go off of memory here. Alternate one is actually around $42 million. So again, this is entire project cost. And what I mean by that is it's not just the section from Woods Memorial Bridge up to 802. It includes 21 going east to capture the section going out towards Walmart. It's also Ladies Island Drive, Sam's Point, SC 802, Sam's Point. So we're going from Rutaboy to Miller Drive West on both of those two corridors. So the entire project cost of $42 million. This assumes the right-of-way for everything. This and all of these include undergrounding and relocating utilities as well, plus the construction, plus the engineering fees that we've already got into it for what's been approved to date. So with alternate one, you know, you're looking at 42 with 3 displacements.
With 30 million in hand from the referendum.
Right, but that was to include all. So we're actively searching for other funding sources and pursuing grants to make up the difference for the projects. Alternates 2 through 4, which would include widening, they all vary slightly, but they're all around the same project cost, and the variation comes in with the right-of-way. How many additional parking spaces are we impacting? How many displacements do we potentially have? Everything. All 3 of those also impact the boat landing. So at Whitehall, with 9 parking spaces. Part of the spaces could be salvaged, but then you're looking at, you know, cars parking there, not necessarily a truck with a trailer. So these are the differences there. And then, of course, alternate 4 and 5 for Beaufort High School, 8 to 16. Again, the 16 million includes having to rebuild the infrastructure at Crystal Lake Park for hitting the building and the parking lot and everything there. Plus, it's actually more roadway improvements because we're going a longer distance with it.
Question, okay. Can you put alternate 1 up on the, so the public and everyone can see it again? This would include the improvements, Hazel Farm Road, Ladies Island Middle, all those things would still happen?
Yes, we're still working on those. So that's Hazel Farm Gate, Ladies Island Middle School access, Sunset Miller, Airport Frontage Road.
Thank you.
But we only have 30 million and we need 12 more
So
based upon the,
just for this one, that doesn't include those. So we're looking for money regardless. When you go back to the original study and the 30 million that was put forth, and you look at the fine print for all those estimates in the back of the study, they did not include any right-of-way on any of the projects. They didn't include utilities. So regardless, we're looking for money. We've got some of us later this week have a meeting to discuss a potential grant that'll be coming out here soon through SCDOT. So, yes. And of course, for the mainline corridor, we've gone after raise grant funding to date, have not been successful, but we also are talking some other things for pursuing funds for it too.
So maybe just to summarize, so basically all the different options, if we do nothing and just work on the main line, we're at $42 million plus the other roads, the Sunset Miller, Hazel Farm and Gay and such. All the options on 21, whether we widen 4 lanes on the section between Meridian and back up to Walgreens, is roughly $8 or $9 million. Option 4, which is the one going through Crystal Lake to the north, that's about $8 million. And option 5 is going to the south to Rutaboy, which is about $16 million. So the costs are the same, all except option 5. Option 5 is the most expensive. The difference is how many impacts, what type of impacts that you have. Every one of them has an impact, just a different impact. And then lastly, if you do nothing and just go with the base model at 42 million, the impact is the trafficability. So you don't gain any traffic improvements on that section, but capacity improvements. So you don't, you meet some of the goals, but not all of the goals. So it's just a matter of those are kind of where we are in the process and the options that are available. And if I don't say it, I know Eric will probably say it in a little bit. But we are at the point from the staff level that there needs to be a decision to staff for us to move forward so we can advance the project and continue to move forward in the design to get it to construction. So I don't envy your seat, but I appreciate your comments.
So am I oversimplifying if I say that the do nothing is to proceed with more or less the Ladies Island plan, knowing that we got some issues to work through, we got some funding issues, but that, and all the other options would cost more, and the question before us as a council is, would we want to vote for any of those to substitute for the Ladies Island plan, which is approved by the voters? Am I simplifying that too much?
I think that's pretty square.
Okay. Eric, did I see you wanted to speak?
Well, I don't know that you can go that far to say do nothing implements the Ladies Island plan, but you know, I would have to defer to Rob Merchant, our planning director, on that particular item.
Yeah.
We just need you all to do something to tell us what you need to do, want us to do, because we've studied this to death. We've allocated a lot of county resources here, and we've made zero progress on this issue.
So are there any other council questions or comments before we have a few folks speak to us from the?
I'd like to hear from the two council members who represent Ladies Island.
Okay.
Councilman Glover and Councilman Somerville.
Okay.
Yeah, my hand's up, Stu. Can you see it?
I can see it. Yes, Paul.
I think we owe it to staff and our citizens to make a decision on the access point to Beaufort High School. I mean, that seems to have been holding up some of these other projects like Hazel Farm Road. I'm prepared to make a motion that we take no action on the intersection of Beaufort High School and 21 and move on to the other, I guess, 7 or 8. I guess there are 7 other projects, and rather than just debate this ad infinitum, ad tedium, because I don't think we're ever going to get a consensus to do any of the options that we have for that intersection. And I think, and as long as we keep debating it, it's just going to drag on and on. It's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. It's not going to be productive. So at the appropriate time, I'll be happy to make a motion that we take no action with respect to the Beaufort High School intersection, that we move on to the other 7 projects.
Okay. York?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
We're having a lot of trouble hearing you, York.
Let me, can you hear me a little better?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I have reservation about alternative 5, and I've said that because it actually goes into the root of war area. So I do have problems with displacing a lot of homes there. I have comfort in the Crystal Lake up off of Hazel Farm Road, and I have strong feelings to support anything on Highway 21. That's where I am.
Okay. I think anybody else on council have a comment or question? Okay. Paul, I think we can hold on your motion until after we have the comments, but I think that's what will probably be the motion that's coming forward. We have a lot of people who signed up. I'm just going to take the first 5 because we really have 15 minutes. Daniel Berryman.
Yeah, thank you. Our discussion is about the traffic circle that's right there on Meridian and Yeomans, and how a verbal agreement that y'all know about, that no traffic would be put on Meridian, so we would ask for the respect of that. Also, the fact that if these traffic circles could be evaluated, that they actually have residential homes that are actually going into them. If y'all are familiar with most of them, I've never seen a traffic circle where residential homes are actually in the circle itself, which is supposed to be for traffic calming to begin with. And those are the things that we would ask that would be considered in the engineering of these circles, that maybe they're not the best option, which would lower costs also, just that. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Nancy Ware?
Hello. I have been living in Beaufort County for 31 years. My husband and I own commercial property on Sea Island Parkway that would be impacted if it's widened to 4 lanes. It makes no sense to bottleneck up the bridge. What I think we need to do is look for a long-term solution, not something that's going to last for just a couple years, but look 5, 10, 20 years down the road. How are we going to get less traffic off of Highway 21 and 802? And I only see this happening with a bypass alternative road. I think this is something that County Council needs to look at. I think we need to move forward and look at the future, because Beaufort will only continue to develop, and putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound will not help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Father? Good to have you with us.
Hi, I'm Father Andrew Trapp with St. Peter's Catholic Church, and I definitely don't envy y'all, because I know as a pastor you can't please everybody. It's a bad situation to be in. But again, basically the same concerns. This option 4, cutting along the side of Crystal Lake, would cut right through the back portion of our property, and it looks like, as far as we could tell, it would cut off part of our school soccer field, where our kids play, and that's very alarming to us. And also it's kind of frustrating, again, because we, like y'all said, you did a lot of development, a lot of investigation preparing for this, but last meeting y'all said that you just had talked to the high school finally, and that they weren't in favor of that option. You would think that that would have been part of the preparation. Well, no one has reached out from the county to talk to us, to hear our concerns as a church, as a school. And we would love to be part of that process. And as of right now, from the little we do know, we'd be very much opposed to a road cutting right through the back portion of our property. So thank you.
Good to have you with us. Thank you, Father. Tim Newman?
How do you follow that? Thanks, y'all, for giving me a chance to speak. But I just want to talk about not only the widening of Highway 21, but Sunset, the traffic circle ideas and things like that. I don't represent anyone, and you do, but I do feel like I speak for a lot of friends here that call the Lowcountry home. I just want to ask a couple of questions about why. Why is this body even entertaining widening a mile of the highway? Why are we wanting to spend millions? A lot of millions. What was that, 40-something million? On a stretch of road that few use when we talk about Sunset. And they don't, the speeding problem that people complain about there is not really there. Why do we consider destroying so many businesses that literally call 21 their front door? There's a lot of them in here that are going to lose either their front parking lot, their side parking lot, or both. When you look at Higher Ground and Butler, look directly across the street from each other. You can't put another lane of traffic there without affecting both of them. Why do we believe that the residents want to walk from Sangster Village to the marina? Thanks. Why do we fight for more lanes to St. Helena to support public safety and evacuations when we've reduced Highway 21 back to one lane in each direction at Walmart? Why do we agree to Whitehall property when we now see that the priority is them building a neighborhood and not our access to a park? Why do we pay tax dollars to build a footbridge to the park that we can't even enjoy for another year? We're sitting here, we drive home every night and we see that bridge, that's the wood bridge that's sitting next to the road, and it's got a 2x4 across the door we can't even use. Why are we talking about traffic circles and raised medians when everybody's answer is a traffic is a traffic circle, when potholes can be fixed a lot more effectively? We're focusing on a section of road where when we talk about Sunset, we're talking about a section of road where a fatal accident hasn't occurred in a decade, or where sidewalks are already in place. If you devoted 1/10 of what we're talking about spending, I'm sorry, Sarah. If we're talking about spending 1/10 of what y'all are talking about spending and paying the sheriff's office to go out there and patrol it for overtime, we'd probably get a lot more people. We'd probably get a lot more people slowing down, and we would reduce the problem areas. We just want to know why. We look in the paper and we see, all of a sudden we see that the headline says Highway 21 4-lane approved. And that's what we can't understand. We need more input from you guys, and you guys need more input from us. I know my time.
Last comment, Neil Lipsy, is it? Neil?
Lipsit. Lipsit.
Lipsit? Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. First of all, option 0, you gave it the right name, 0, because that's what it accomplishes, 0. It creates bottlenecks. Businesses and residents are going to be displaced. One that comes to mind, Butler Marine, they moved to create, so Crystal Park can be created, and then now they're being threatened again. Not right. Another thing is the Ladies Island Village Plan. We need to take a step back and look at that, and really look at the village plan, try to go in that direction. A lot of people spent a lot of time on that. City council before I was on there. County council, a number of people spent countless hours working on it, and we need to go back there and just a simpler plan. Finally, playgrounds. Going through a playground, we need to create more playgrounds, not less. I feel like there's sacred ground, and this one especially sacred. I just insulted, that you would even think about going through a playground. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to speak, and I know you got a tough decision ahead, and like I said, please look at the Ladies Island Village Plan. That's really the best way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, let's bring it back to the dais, and at this point, we'll go back to discussion, and Paul, if you want to make a motion, fine. If there's some other discussion first, that's fine too.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to make a motion. It's fairly simple. My motion is that we take no action with respect to the intersection of the Beaufort High School access on 21, and that we move forward with the other 7 projects.
Okay. Is there a second for Paul's motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a second from the chairman. Duly seconded. Open it up for discussion. Members of council.
Just
Paul, can I get you to restate your motion one more time? I think I missed part of it.
Yeah, that's good.
Sure, I'm happy to, Brian. I said my motion is that we move to. My motion is that we take no action with respect to the intersection of Beaufort High School and Highway 21, which was one of the 9 projects, which is what we've been dealing with for the last several months. Take no action with respect to that. By so doing, we're saying we're not going to do option 4, option 5, or option 0. I think that needs to be clarified, that we're not still debating that one. My motion is we're no longer debating it. We're moving forward on the other projects and taking no action with respect to that intersection.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I'll support that motion.
I'd like to make an amendment, Mr. Chairman,
Hang on just a second, let's make sure we clarify it.
to clarify that,
Yeah.
that we're not going to do any changes to.
If I understood Paul's motion, it would be to not do any of the alternatives that we're talking about, 0, 4, 5, 1, 2, or 3 per se for the entry, but that we continue with the other 7 projects that were part of the Ladies Island plan. Did I say that correctly, Paul?
You did. That's exactly.
Okay. Alice?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian, did I see you had another comment, or?
No, that was all I needed to hear, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
You got a hand in the audience if you're entertaining that.
No, we're back to council discussion at this point. That's just the way we work. We don't go back and forth when we're in discussion. Other comments? Joe?
No.
Okay. Larry? Chris? York? Brian? Mark? Gerald? Okay. Seeing we have no other comments, we're ready to vote. Is there any objection at this point from any member of council relative to this motion? Seeing none.
I don't have an objection.
Okay.
I guess my question is for staff, if they could, with this motion moving forward, how would we address the increasing problem facing Highway 21?
Question is from York, how would we, if we do what we're talking about, how would we address the increasing traffic on 21? Jared, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot, but you answer that.
I'm sorry.
York asked whether, if we go with what's motioned, how would we be addressing the increasing traffic on 21?
If you go with don't doing anything as far as the high school and nothing in between the bridge and Ladies Island Drive, then you're not addressing it at all. There is no feasible way. One possible way, based off a comment, it's not an immediate way, but potential long-term way, is to coordinate with LATS. There's been studies before, but to continue to search for another option, a third bridge to Ladies Island. That would be one way, but that's definitely not an immediate way, a short-term way, no funding way, but that would be an alternate way. One question I would ask for council, just to clarify on the motion, is the do nothing in regards to Beaufort High School. Would that motion include that we still do the improvements on Ladies Island Drive from Rue du Bois and Sun to Miller, as well as 21 from Walgreens out to Walmart, just not the section from Walgreens back to the bridge?
That's my understanding of Paul's motion.
Okay. And then also, secondary question to that. So that's doing no traffic improvements. Would the pedestrian and bicycle improvements or aesthetic components or utility components, would that be something that would still be considered in that section as well as the rest of the section?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there may be some easement / right-of-way components associated with that, not as much, but we would be able to come back to at a later date to council to share what those improvements would entail as far as impacts.
So there could be running improvements, and there also could be things that we eventually decide to put in a transportation referendum, if more than likely we'll do in 24.
That's correct. And also, just for the record, I would like to state that the alternative for an additional road with a third bridge, that would violate the Ladies Island plan. The Ladies Island plan, a lot of things about transportation in this area violate the Ladies Island plan, but that would be one of them. The Ladies Island plan specifically speaks to trying to postpone the need for a third bridge for as long as possible.
Okay. So we have before us a motion duly seconded. I've seen no objections at this point. Although York, do you have an objection to it?
I will, and I'm simply not,
Okay.
right now supporting anything,
Okay.
at this time, so I'm gonna vote no to the.
Okay.
Okay.
So we basically have 10 for and 1 against, I believe, if everybody's on board. Oh, we're not. So 9 and 1. 9 and 1. So the motion carries 9-1, as we previously stated, and that will take us forward. Doesn't mean we won't continue to work the issues, but in terms of this particular issue, I view it as resolved for the time being. I'm sure all of you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting, although you're welcome to, but if a lot of you are leaving, we'll take just a minute, let you go, and then we'll resume our meeting. Less painful than I thought. I don't know, his computer's there, maybe he's watching it or something, he may have had to take a call or something.
Turn them off.
Let me call the meeting back to order. We got a couple quick items that we'll take care of. Item number 9 is the Broad River Fishing Pier. Jared, you got an update on that for us?
So I'll tee it up and then give it to Neil. Neil's been working with the engineers on this, but just so everybody's up to date. So Broad River Fishing Pier, this was discussed some time ago. Probably, was it earlier this year? Or? So last year in November it was discussed, and basically what we have is a dying pier. Basically it's in its stage of cancer, and we're just managing how we treat that bridge or that fishing pier. Each year we do an inspection to see how much concrete falls off, and that's how we measure how quickly it's dying. So there's a public safety issue there. At some point we've got to deal with it and demo that bridge or rehab it in some shape. There were several options that were presented in November, with the option that county council selected and gave staff direction is to replace demo the bridge, replace the bridge with, right now the fishing pier is 1,800 feet in length, and then replace the bridge with a 900-foot pier. So since then we've done some due diligence on that, and we've got some options, and Neil will talk about that as well as where we go from there. So Neil.
Thank you, Jared. Afternoon, Chairman and rest of the committee. Just to give you guys a recap from the November 2020 meeting, the alternative F hybrid was outlined in the McSweeney report. That was voted on without objections, and we started to move on into what we consider the meat of the project, so to say. Phase 1 is currently underway with surveying and soil borings is complete. This phase 1, just to remind you guys, is with the A&H tax of $114K to move forward. In addition, the bathymetry, which is the survey that happens, or the sounding that happens in the river, is complete. Grant research is complete. At this time, we could not find any grant opportunities. Soil borings and investigation is complete as well. The engineer has also completed the pile analysis as well. We've started preliminary engineering calculations to date. And in addition, we've started talking to all the regulatory agencies, which includes DNR, DHEC, and as well as not OCR, Army Corps of Engineers for permitting process, just to start the process. In addition, we've done some of the structural engineering and looking at all that, and we've started talking with emergency services to how to accommodate how we can get an emergency vehicle as opposed to pedestrian loads. We have came up with the concept of including a UTV on site, and we'll house that in kind of a garage or secured area, and that'll kind of meet the needs for if there's any emergency response out on the pier and so forth and so on. There was 4 geometric layouts that are considered. I've kind of put in option 1. Sarah, there's a layout if you could. So this layout is the one that we are recommending for you guys to take a vote on. At this point, this option completely gets us out of the DOT right-of-way. It also has the best parking layout, and it's also in a location where we won't get any of the impacts from the scour or the wave action from the existing structure. So minimal degradation to this potentially new pier, which would obviously keep it in life and service longer. A couple things that are kind of in the planning stages is a demo with the site contractor or potential site contractor. We're also looking at determination of the quantities for the new pier. We're also looking at the demolition volume to be completed. And one of the current plans that we're looking at is to use the existing substructure of the pier, the piles and the caps, and to lay it around the new fishing area to create some habitat environment for the new fish to maybe whatnot, and maybe help growth that and foster some of that. We plan to drag out the superstructure onto the high side or up on the hill, look to crush the concrete and recycle the steel, and then use the crushed concrete to build up some of the parking area as we move forward in some of this project. That's all going to reduce our costs and for transportation and whatnot to move out of the site. So this plan kind of has potential to offer considerable savings in both the demo and then the new construction. So that's just something to consider. Moving forward, this plan also is looking at the phase 2, which would then be the new pier construction, final permitting process, as I talked about with the agencies that I listed, and then determining the construction estimate, and then finally the pier demolition. And that would be kind of phase 2, which is currently funded by A&H tax. So at this time, I'm recommending moving forward with those said phase 2 components, as well as the new pier as outlined up on the board.
Which is option 1.
Yes, sir. And I'm entertaining any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is great. That's used by the public quite a bit, and with this new one, it will be used even more. So I'd like to make a motion that we go forward with the recommendation.
Being my district, I'll second that.
Okay. Motion duly seconded.
So what this motion would be is to move forward with this alternative and apply for. So right now, what we have funded is preliminary phase 1. So all this due diligence works and preliminary design layout. This would be, we would apply for phase 2 for the final engineering design and A&H tax, which is about $230,000. So we'll make that application and based off this alternative, design it as you see. However, what we do not have and what's not part of this motion, and it can be a later determination, is the construction of this. So the construction, as we talked about last year, this is probably in the $8 million range. During the final design and analysis, we'll have an updated cost estimate performed. But all this motion will be is for us to proceed with the final design, and then we'll come back to council as we're nearing the end of the design to say, all right, we have it designed and it's ready on the shelf. Do you want to fund it in a budget or bonding or anything like that? So
it'll be shovel-ready, funded from hospitality taxes.
We'll have a shovel-ready project, yes.
Okay. Other comments?
If I might, Jared, Neil, the original, what was the length of the original pier?
The current pier is approximately 1,800 feet.
And this is?
We are looking at about 900, about half the size.
But half the length.
Yeah, it's half the length. That puts us out, this current proposed pier puts us out to a favorable fishing condition because there's some flats that are kind of at the base of the proposed and the existing pier. So it'd be optimal for folks that fish.
Well, that's the point I was getting to, because at low tide, a lot of the pier is actually just covering the mud, and if you don't extend it out any further, then I'm concerned that on low tide, half of this pier is not going to be usable for fishing. But I'm gonna leave that up to the experts.
Yeah, our consultants looked at that, and that's why we went out to the 900 to achieve better fishability, if that's a proper word.
Okay.
Good work.
Okay, so we have a motion to move forward with complete the design, get the bid package ready with whatever permitting we need. Do we need a separate resolution later on to get hospitality tax funds, or do we include that in this motion?
We included in this motion. So this would be to move forward with the design and pursue A&H application.
Okay, because that would require 3 readings, as I remember our rules.
Do we need 3 readings to apply for a project?
I think so.
Not to apply, but if you want to proceed with this project with a 230, not do the application, it needed to go be an ordinance.
Yeah.
Which if I need to, I can amend.
So I guess what Hayes has said, if you want to use general fund and do it, we'd have to add it to the ordinance that we're working on, the budget amendment, or if we want to pursue the A&H tax, it would just be permission to apply.
I think we can approve it, and when it gets to council, it's going to take 3 readings anyway, so however you all want to.
Well, I don't think it needs 3 readings. It needs 3 readings if we want to attach it to the budget amendment, or if we just want to apply for the A&H tax, it's just the approval to apply.
I think those are 3 readings too, if I remember correctly.
Let's do both. Let's attach it to the budget amendment and apply for the A&H tax. And then if we get it from the A&H tax, then we don't have to use the budget.
Okay, fair enough. So the motion is to move it forward, preliminary engineering, get it done, and staff will figure out the best way to finance the balance of the engineering. Are we okay with that? Anybody disagree? Any objections to this? Any other comments? Seeing none, this stands approved without objection. Item number.
Hayes explain something.
Okay.
So part of the budget amendment, we're using A&H tax funds, which has to go through an ordinance, which 3 readings in a public hearing, which we're already going to do for use to redo the All Joy Landing and for pier improvements and lighting in the Pocket Park. So you could add this; they wouldn't have to apply it. We could just tack it on there, and then go ahead and get this thing done and get this pier done.
Right. I think that's acceptable, and you all can figure out the best
I can add that to the budget amendment.
Good, fair enough. Okay. Item number 10 is the on-call construction management. Jared?
Yes, sir. So this is very similar to what we've already done before on 2 other contracts with traffic and with transportation. So in advance of the would-be sales tax, transportation sales tax, but just in general operating is a standard for us to help expeditiously execute work. So this is for construction management and CEI, which is basically inspection services during the life of a project, construction of a project. So we put out a solicitation in May. We received 17 submissions, so very positive out in the engineering arena, well received. And out of that, we had a 5-member staff that qualified them and went through all the proposals and came up with a top 5. So we have 5 companies: F&ME Consultants, HDR Engineering, ICE Infrastructure Consultant and Engineering, Mead and Hunt, and SEPI Engineering and Construction that were qualified as the highest ranked proposers. And so we would offer them a contract, and then they would be basically on the shelf until the project. And then at the time of a project, like the other contracts, we would get a proposal, and come back with a proposal, scope, and feedback to council for award pending procurement, the cost of the project, however that cost was. So this would be a 3-year contract with the opportunity to renew for 2 one-year contracts. And again, these would basically just be on the shelf, ready to go. So when there's a project ready to do, whether it's now or future sales tax, we would have that opportunity in front of us.
It's part of the continuing way of doing business, way SCDOT does it, I believe, in a lot of these
That's
areas.
correct. So SCDOT has about 8 or 10 different on-calls so they have them ready to go so they can expedite their work as well.
You
So
match
very
what you
similar.
need with their availability and their skill sets.
Yep, and a lot of the ones that are on DOTs are ones that proposed on ours, so.
Might look for a recommendation to approve that award.
Make the motion.
I'll
Okay.
second the motion.
Second. Any further discussion?
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, York?
Where are the location of these companies? How many are actually in the county?
Question was roughly the locations of the recommended companies?
There is 1, 2, 3 that have an office in Beaufort County. None of them are headquartered in Beaufort County. All of them have a major, some of them are international, national firms. Some of them are Southeast, some of them are a little bit smaller. All of them have major operations in South Carolina. I think if not all, most all of them have done work in Beaufort County. And like I said, 3 of them have a satellite office in Beaufort County.
Okay. Any other questions? Any objections? Seeing none, this stands approved as recommended. The next one is acceptance of a FAA grant for the Hilton Head Airport in the amount of $1.162 thousand. And just to refresh your memories, John is here. I didn't see you, John. I saw you earlier.
There are about 700 people standing in front of me. I thought they were here for this.
John, well, they were, and then we told them we were going to pass it, so they left. John comes to us to just about every session with more money.
Well, this is the second grant that we've talked about for so long that the FAA had said that was coming for the terminal project. So the total is $11,626,638. The reason it's not $10 million straight is that there was some. Each year, there's a couple of different types of grants available to the airport, and there's been some grant money basically saved in our account that gets applied to this. So there's what's called entitlement money and discretionary money that's in here. Okay. There's $10 million discretionary and the 1.626 in entitlement money. So that has been offered by the FAA, and it's actually gone through the acceptance process with staff because it's an electronic process, but it does need to come to you and then on the council for the resolution to accept it.
It's a formality. Look for a motion to accept this FAA grant.
So move, sir.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any questions for John on this grant? Seeing none. Any objections? Seeing none. John, you're approved to accept that.
Thank you.
Use it wisely. As
we certainly will. Thank you.
Okay, this brings us to the other major item that we had on the agenda, which has to do with the agreement with the town of Hilton Head on a memo of understanding, memo of agreement on the US 278 corridor project. And I think I might take a minute, and I'd like to do the same thing I did with the Sea Island piece, is talk a little bit about where we are, get some preliminary discussion going here, get comments from those folks that are here that want to comment, and then we'll come back and see what action it is that we want to take. But kind of a summary, I think, of where we are. This has been a long process. You know, we're at a point now where we're in the 5th year, about 2 times what it took to get from Pearl Harbor to D-Day. Put it in time perspective. And it's a complicated process. There's a federal NEPA process. People wanted to have an independent review, so that was done, a company called HDR, and there was some good things that came out of it that were accepted and rolled into the project. There were some things that maybe people thought differently. There was a land planning exercise that the town undertook with a company called MKSK. Came forward with 26 recommendations, and my sense of those recommendations are that they've basically been resolved. A lot of them, some of them don't apply to the project, but many of them are being included in the design portion. There's agreement to work on it together. The only one of major consequence that we had debate on was whether it'd be a single span or a double span, so-called splitting the bridge, which ended up at a $25 million cost. And my understanding is the town has backed away from that, so there's no disagreement with the single span. And there's agreement that the project needs to look at going down as far as Gumtree, which is the next intersection down from Stony. So all in all, I think there's a fairly sound transportation plan that's been done by DOT. There's still the issue of what the gateway looks like, and I know the county and the town will be working, on that as to what it looks like to make it very attractive. And there's also what's called a value engineering phase that's required by federal law, and that's when there'll be another opportunity to do some fine tuning. So I think we have on the table three things that make up this memo of understanding. The first one is it's time to advance the environmental assessment where we have to go to federal highway and get approval for this thing. And we find ourselves nationally and in this project in an inflationary spiral. We first started talking about the independent review last April. We didn't know we had any cost problems, although we speculated we might, but now I think we know that we have at least a $30 million shortfall. So the longer we wait, the more that cost of the project will go up. And if we run short of funds, then it's probably going to come at the expense of the aesthetics of the project. There's a second piece, which is what's called adaptive signals. And this is where you take computers and use them to manage the signals. And so you find yourself not at a red light and nobody's going the opposite way, so that the computer can manage to get more traffic through. Works particularly well when you're off peak. And in fact, they've been doing a fair amount of that over time. If you look at the intersections on Hilton Head as in total, the intersection delays were actually about 50% higher 10 years ago. So it's a gradual thing, but the town has it in their CIP budgets. Obviously, the county will be a partner in that, DOT will be, and so it's logical to move that forward. In fact, I would argue if for some reason this MOU doesn't go forward, that one ought to go forward on its own, but it's logical to have it folded in. The last piece is having a second independent review has been suggested by many people, and I think there's an agreement that makes sense to do. It's got a wider scope. It's actually taking a look at the whole island in terms of what the traffic requirements are. So in terms of the second review, it's something that I support. I think it honors Senator Davis and what he's been wanting to see happen in discussions that he's led. It's heavily in the Stony area, but it will extend to a much wider area. And there's perhaps a couple things that can be resolved, as it goes forward. One is there's always been a concern about what the growth rate is going to be, and obviously they have to project a growth rate in order to design it. On the other hand, many people believe the island as it built out. The population's been roughly level for the last 20 years, and town's projections is it'll go up, I think it's 20% in the next 20 years. And the other is, I think the LATS design looks at, in their long-range plan, has parallel access roads on either side of 278, whereas this design does not. And that may be good to let the independent people looking at it weigh in on that, and maybe it's something that gets resolved. But in any event, if you look at it, the bridges are kind of the long lead piece of it, and that's where the cost is, that's where the cost exposure is, and so that piece needs to proceed on so that we don't further end up with inflationary. But at the same time, the independent review can be done in parallel with that, such that it doesn't delay the overall project. So in other words, it can occur within the timeline that we need to do the bridges. There'll be some good ideas coming out of the second review, and they can be incorporated. And I don't see anybody arguing for delaying moving the EA or the environmental assessment forward to wait for the independent review, because basically what it would be doing is perhaps adding 50, 60 million to the cost for something that may or may not change in terms of a major way of doing it. So I think the question before us today is a memo of understanding, memo of agreement that's been drafted between the town and the county staffs. And the question before us is, do we go forward with that in order to do the things that I talked about? Or if no, then we have to maybe drop back to dividing the project. So I think that's the question that's on the table in terms of this memo of agreement. Have I captured that somewhat correctly?
You did pretty well. The one thing I will say is that some of you received an email today regarding a memorandum of agreement that was sent out by the town late last week before they had our updated one. They've asked for us today to send them the official version that is recommended out of this committee today. Basically, the old MOU stated that in exchange for the independent review, the county would expect municipal consent on the project. We've changed that language now to say that we'll deal with the we don't address municipal consent, meaning we'll deal with it at the appropriate time down the road, but we do ask for the town to make a statement to agree to allow us to continue with the submittal of the environmental documents through the NEPA process.
That's the key document.
And that's in the draft MOA that is in your backup material.
Is that referred to the NEPA project process?
Yes, that's correct. Everything else, we've worked with the town of Hilton Head Island, Mark Orlando again. Mark and I, we have a great working relationship. He's a great asset for the island, as is Josh Gruber and is Sean Colon. We have worked with them to craft an agreement that we think that benefits the town, benefits the project, but at the same time allows the county and DOT to move forward. And we can, if we get the MOA done, it's my understanding, Jared can correct me if I'm incorrect, if I'm wrong about this, is that if we get the MOA done, then the Federal Highway Administration has said that they're not really concerned about the funding shortfall, so we could go ahead and submit the NEPA documents almost immediately.
Absolutely. Jared, you want to add something to it? We missed some things. By the way, I think Jared's done a super job working with them and drafting the memo of understanding.
Yeah, so the MOA, I've been working with town staff. Tomorrow, I'll actually go to town council meeting. They'll be taking up they're not necessarily taking up the MOA to vote on it, but they will be listening to it, and then I believe they're taking it up in October. So they'll just be discussing it tomorrow. They're going to wait until county council adopts it at county council meeting, not just at public facilities committee. But I'm going to go there tomorrow. They had previously, a couple weeks ago, had sent an MOA to the county for us to review and adopt. And that's what we used as the starting point to go back and forth with staff. So staff is coordinated, but their town staff wants to coordinate with their council at the meeting tomorrow. I'll be attending that and also speak to the behalf on why certain items were changed or not changed. Hopefully that'll give some more background information to some of their council members and where the county is. And again, they're looking to take action on the MOA after full county council takes action on our side. So that's just where we are in it.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question. I'm not completely clear. So the NEPA process, we vote for this today. We still have to wait until they do it in October?
Yeah, so that our goal is to submit the most fully vetted environmental assessment where we can all stand behind comfortably. And we feel like our best opportunity is if everybody agrees in some format, and this being the MOA, that we're working together on the project. And DOT has been a great resource in providing guidance on this process to us, and they feel the same. Rest assured that if we develop this document and all agree towards it, that puts the best foot forward for us to be successful in receiving a FONSI back, so we can advance it. What we don't want to do is submit environmental document that hasn't been vetted and there's questions out there, and then it gets tied up at the Federal Highway review process. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
Alice, they want us to take action on the 26th of September, and then they're going to vote on it at their next meeting after that meeting, which will be October 4th.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
I would like to make the motion that we recommend approval to the full council for the memorandum of agreement as drafted.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Additional discussion? I would make one addition to that in the sense that if we approve it, it's a little bit of a conceptual. There could be some minor modification, word changes and stuff as it works its way through. But that would be normal anyway.
Well, we'd have to get those back before the 26th.
Yeah.
There's more than likely, again, I'll be attending their meeting tomorrow. So if there's any small changes to be made, we can present that and provide that at our September 26th council meeting. So.
Okay.
Chairman, being to do public comment.
Yes, I'm going to, yeah. I think now we had some comments before we take a motion, and I should have done that. We have a couple people here who wanted to speak. Dietrich?
My name is Diederik Advocaat. I live in Hilton Head. Been involved with looking at this project for the last almost 3 years. My background is in finance. I work for the World Bank. I've seen many infrastructure projects. I've done a lot of M&A work, just like you do. And we have gone through this project. And I can tell you that most of the projects, infrastructure-wise and others, we have a process, and we do that on a calculated, analytical way. And what is happening here in the county, and I'm also talking to the other county council members, is that we feel that the wool is getting pulled over our eyes, and people are going to end up with egg on their face. First and foremost, the independent review that happened earlier was not a truly independent review. So now we are asking for a truly independent review, and that process is apparently going very slow to find an entity that needs to do that. A truly independent review will only strengthen the way forward. So before anything else gets decided upon, you need to go and go through that process. You're talking about 2 bridges, 1 bridge, 6 lanes, 2 lanes. Nobody knows. Yet the whole council is going through with something where they go into this deaf and blind. So, secondly, we feel that this whole process gets continuously manipulated and changed as we go. And it is not what we would expect from our county government and from our town government. What I don't see when I go into a county meeting like here is people taking notes. People speak, but it doesn't get recorded, it doesn't get taken in. And I want to tell you that we are serious about this. There are 10,000 people on Hilton Head and in the area that say, wait, let's have that independent, truly independent review. But nothing happens. You still ignore it. You still are trying to formulate an MOU that slants towards the county, whereas the MOU was made to be a joint effort between the town and the county. Now I see, Mr. Chairman, you are wearing a shirt from the county. Our mayor wears a shirt of the town. There is a sense of pride. And there's a sense of pride with you to do things right and not to rush off blind and deaf because we want to get things done. There is time to do it. Nobody has told us that we are under a deadline, so let's do it the right way. As simple as that. Tomorrow we have a town council meeting, and I tell you there's going to be a lot of people there that oppose the way we are doing business. Thank you.
Okay, Jesse White? Always good to have you with us.
Yes, thank you. Jessie White on behalf of the Coastal Conservation League. I guess I would just start by echoing some of Diedrich's concerns. I think this project of its scale and magnitude requires a lot of cooperation, and it's in the best interests of the county and the town to be on the same page and working together towards a better project. We have concerns with moving forward with the NEPA, signing off on the NEPA analysis without doing this independent review. It creates a perception that the NEPA analysis is not as meaningful as it's intended to be, and that it's more of a box to check off as opposed to a real review of the direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts of the project, which is what it's intended. Without that truly independent review, the full scope of the environmental assessment is in question in our mind, and we would be seriously concerned with the project if it were to be moved forward in that fashion, just as we would have very serious concerns with segmenting portions of the project out and trying to separate the NEPA review. The whole purpose of the NEPA review is to take a holistic approach, and this is a substantial project and going to have a very lasting impact on the county and on Hilton Head, and it deserves to be done right, and it deserves to be done in time to give it that time to be done right. And I think you're in a great position having leadership at the State House from both DOT and Senator Davis in particular, with assurances that financially you will not be put in a pinch here on this project, and that the leadership wants to see it done right as well. And so with all of those things together, we really feel that it is in your best interests to work with the town. Don't rush this project. It is too important not to get it right. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else here that wants to speak? Okay, seeing none, let's come back then. So we had a motion from Joe to proceed and a second, I forgot who it was.
Me.
For you, okay. Proceed. So open it back up for discussion among the members. Motion being to proceed with the memo of agreement with the town. Okay. The only comment I would make, it would be a little bit in response to the comments that were made. The independent review probably going to take, let's say it takes 9 months to do it. And inflation is probably increasing the cost of the project at 5 or 6 million for every month we delay. So the question is, would we delay the project and incur a cost of 50 million because we think something might possibly come out of an independent review, when the alternative is to proceed with the environmental assessment? If nothing comes out of that changes the project, nothing is lost. If it turned out that we really ought to do something different, we're still no worse off to restart and do whatever came out of the study at that point in time. So in other words, if there was a better route than the current bridges, then you end up start over again anyway. So I think that's the issue, is do we risk maybe $50 million in cost overrun in order to take a look at this study? So anyway, any further comments? Is there any objection on council to moving the memo of agreement forward? Okay, seeing none, there not being any objection, this passes without objection. Jared, I overlooked your county administrator report. You got a quick one for us? Sorry about that.
If you want to overlook and bypass it, I understand that too.
No, we'd like to hear from you.
All right, I'll just go over a few things that don't make it to the agenda, just so you get a full flavor of what's going on at staff level. Transportation, we held a public meeting on Sunset Boulevard on September 7th, so a little over a week ago, to discuss safety alternatives on the segment beyond the sales tax. So sales tax goes from Sea Island Parkway up to Miller Drive, and then that's all of Sunset. So this was additional concerns that we've heard from the citizens about speeding and safety issues. So we had hired a consultant to take a look at those options. They had a number of options. They actually, coordination with Representative Erickson and others, there was a petition sent to DOT to lower the speed limit from 35 to 30, which allowed us to use more traffic calming opportunities. And so our design consultant came up with 4 different options. We had a good public meeting. People came, discussed the options, presented a little sticker on which option they liked, and it was overwhelming majority. They picked every option you got, use that please. So we're going to move forward with the design on that. That'll be part of the cost we talked about in the budget amendment, to move forward on some of those design safety improvements. But as we talked at the meeting, we do not have any funding set for to implement whatever is designed out of that project. So that'll be for future discussion. But all in all, it was a really well-received meeting, and there was good public input that we're going to use in the design. Also, in transportation, staff is working with LATS and their staff in developing a regional ITS architecture plan. I know that sounds Greek. It is a little bit Greek to me, myself even. But ITS is Intelligent Transportation Systems. So this is a connected, as our world gets smarter and technologies are improved, this is a connected traffic system that deals with signal lightings that we just talked about, synchronization of signals, overhead message boards, whether we use those or those are something that would be worthwhile in the county to manage traffic, a traffic management center on how we assess traffic remotely, and even the introduction of smart vehicles and technologies along the way. So before we can implement projects, it's a good idea for us to look at the regional approach, and LATS as our regional partner. So we're looking to see about how to facilitate a plan of such. From capital projects, I'm proud to say that the roof at the MC Riley Pool has been repaired. But just as we were about to bring the structuring down, there was some faulty lighting that needed to get repaired. So rather than come back and do that later, while we've got the scaffolding up, we're going to go ahead and correct that too. That'll probably take a few weeks, so we envision that we'll be ready to open the pool back to the public in October. Arthur Horn building just next door. Heaven knows we've been working on that project for a long time. I'll be glad when it's completely finished, but we are getting to a milestone. So we're working with the city building department now and closing in on a certificate of occupancy. So we'll be able to occupy all 3 floors. And we expect that by the end of October as well, so start moving people in there. However, the second floor, we are going to continue with developing some renovations on the second floor to move broadcasting and some expanded services for magistrate in there. So the third floor will be open for IT to move in, and we'll be coordinating with the magistrate about the first floor, what type of needs and uses they want to accommodate. But it'll be open the first floor. The overflow and the second conference room or open space for the magistrate on the second floor would not be finished yet. So we'll coordinate with the magistrate on that. So Public Works, boat landings, we were able to complete our improvements at the H.E. Trask boat landing. So that one got opened up prior to Labor Day. So everything went well on that project. We just started working on some improvements and maintenance work, repair work at the Sands boat landing. That's expected to be under construction for about 3 weeks. So hopefully by the 1st of October, that one will be ready to go as well. Also, over the last month, we've had we had 5 public meetings to talk about our boat landings and to get public input on our master plan that we're developing. A lot of good comment there. Still opportunity for folks to make comments online, so we can fold that into our plan and still targeting the 1st of January, February for a completed master plan that we'll be able to present on that. And then lastly is broadband. We've got a lot of interest lately from various internet service providers, some existing, some new internet service, actually two new ones interested in doing business in Beaufort County and specifically in our rural areas. So we've been working with IT department on that, coordinating with some different entities. We've written a couple of support letters for grants that they're applying for, and we coordinate with them specifically with some of our ARPA funds if there's an opportunity to leverage those to make sure that we hit all the areas. But a lot of interest and a lot of service providers, just broadband in general. The reason, again, not to mention this but not to reiterate this more than it needs to be, but we didn't obligate a lot of funds inside of ARPA for broadband because there's a lot of funding coming from the federal government. That funding is coming through the internet service providers. So there may be an opportunity where we can pair up with them, but the fact that we've got the ones locally that are interested plus some outside ones is very promising that we're going to fix our broadband holes within the county. So that is my report, and I'll gladly answer any questions to that. So,
any questions for Jared? Thank you as always. We need to appoint a Mr. Arthur Hanman to the Low Country Regional Transportation Authority to fill a partial term through 2024. Look for a motion to approve that.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay. Any objection? Seeing none, that stands approved without objection. We have a need to go into executive session for two items. One has to do with potential acquisition purchase of 1505 North Street, and the other one has to do with some land swaps with the town of Hilton Head. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Any objection? Eric, do you anticipate we're going to take any action on either of those? So we may have some action coming out?
You're going to need action on both.
Okay, good. Thank you. So anyway, we'll go next door and you can wait around or whatever. We'll try to make it quick.
Fort Fremont closes out a 350-year legacy of coastal fortifications in Port Royal Sound, beginning in the mid-16th century. It also represents the closing chapter of America's coastal defense system before the dawn of air power. Fort Fremont is an example of the most advanced military technology of its time. It would parallel the B-17 and aircraft carrier of World War II, the F-35 of today. Fort Fremont was an important part of the Beaufort culture, very similar to Parris Island and the Marine Corps Air Base today.
In 1525, the Spaniards named this sound and this harbor Santa Elena. They called the navigational point La Punta de Santa Elena, the point of Santa Elena. And what the Spanish explorers discovered is that Port Royal Sound is a unique piece of geography. It's the deepest natural harbor south of the Chesapeake Bay, possibly south of New York. The channel into Port Royal Sound, this I find a remarkable geological fact. The channel has not changed for 500 years. There's no inlet on the southern coast that hasn't shifted entirely in 500 years, except Port Royal Sound. There's something geologically different, or one might say magical, about Port Royal Sound. So Spanish sailors, being the best in the world in their time, found this place very early, knew that for the Spanish explorations of the American Southeast, this would be the entrada, the entrance. And so they built a city across the river, across the sound from where we are on Parris Island. It became the first capital of Florida. And they explored the backcountry from this location for more than a century with the object of building a highway from this magnificent harbor to Mexico City. So the Sound was known to the Spaniards. It was known to the French, who actually got here first and created the first Protestant colony in the New World on Parris Island over my shoulder. And that colony was a failure. The Spaniards replaced them. It was part of Spanish Florida when the English arrived 150 years later. And this became, as a consequence, a battleground in the 18th century between Spanish interests in Florida and St. Augustine and the English colony in Carolina and in Charleston. And back and forth these wars went, many of them naval wars, many of them employing, as all the sailors knew by then, the magic of Port Royal Sound. When the Civil War came, Confederates defended the harbor, but it was basically indefensible against large naval forces. So the U.S. Navy made it their principal target during the beginning of the Civil War and sent the largest flotilla of ships assembled by the United States Navy in the 19th century into Port Royal Sound on November 7th, 1861. In a 4-hour cannonade, which would have been deafening from where we're sitting, was heard for miles from Savannah nearly to Charleston. It was called the Day of the Big Gun Shoot. During the Civil War, this harbor that we're looking at was filled with ships. There would be hundreds of ships in this harbor. There was a 1,000-foot dock with a railroad on top off of Hilton Head. The military installation was mammoth. There were 13,000 U.S. soldiers on Hilton Head, which we're looking at. The largest population on Hilton Head until 1974. So this was a major U.S. government installation in the heart of the South. It was the headquarters of the U.S. Army Department of the South, but more importantly, it was the headquarters of the United States Navy South Atlantic Blockading Squadron. So the biggest ships in the Navy were here. And so it became, and that's really where the story of Fort Fremont starts, with that huge Civil War military operations and installations on Hilton Head, on St. Helena Island, on Parris Island, and in Beaufort.
After the Civil War, we're going to see a massive change in technology that's going to revolutionize the military. During the Civil War, we had ironclad ships, we had rifled cannons, but they were all made out of iron, and they were not terribly effective. But its technology is going to change after the Civil War. We're going to see steel produced, and steel is much harder. So now we have a new material to make armor out of for ships. So we can have these armored ships made with steel that are much more resistant to shot. Because I have steel, I can make stronger barrels for my guns. I can rifle and machine these much better, and the rifling is the spirals that are cut in the barrel that allows it to shoot further with more accuracy. And we can also now have breech loading guns that can lock from behind, so I can load my gun from behind. I don't have to go have the old black powder muzzle loading cannon that I had before. Now I can fire much more rapidly. If I compare the gun of 1890 to the guns of 1860, for the same caliber, the same diameter gun, the 1890 gun will be able to fire a projectile that's 4 times heavier, can shoot it 3 times further, can put it in with greater precision, and can put it through much more armor than anything we had in 1860. It's a world difference. A military historian, E.R. Lewis, would say that the change between the Civil War and 1890 in artillery technology was the greatest that would be seen since invention of artillery in the 14th century to the introduction of the nuclear projectile in the 1950s. So there's been a huge change in gun technology. At the same time, it's not just the steel, but also the powder that fires these guns is different. We have new chemical makeup, and sort of like cordite is invented now, and it's still a widely used military explosive even today. Smokeless powder is invented during this period of time. And it's not just chemical composition, but it's the details of how you make the grain, how fast they burn. So much like the skill of firing a solid rocket, solid fuel rocket, it's that same kind of technology that's been developed in these gunpowder and this new powder. So our weapons of this day are much, much greater. They would be the great killing machines of World War I. Most of the casualties on the battlefields of World War I would come from artillery. So the world has seen a huge change in artillery, and that's tied into changes in ships. We now have steel armored ships. They're all steam powered. They are now equipped with these fine long-range guns, and they now become the dominant threat of the late 19th, early 20th century. This is the threat. The French and the English would bombard cities like Cairo and reduce them to rubble because they were unable to defend them. So this is how the world was seeing the threat from this new technology. Big battleships are the threat of the era, and new guns and fortifications on the ground are what you have to defend against them.
One of the most important and first things that happened after the Civil War is they built a railroad to Port Royal Sound, which didn't exist. It was the first connection of the Sea Islands to the mainland. And the advantage of that railroad is it brought coal to Port Royal Sound. So when the coal was delivered, the Navy followed.
In 1872, Robert Smalls was in the South Carolina legislature, and he pushed through a resolution to the Secretary of War calling for them to put a Navy station on Parris Island. And eventually he would go on to Congress, where he would continue his support for a Navy station here in the Beaufort, Port Royal area. They eventually opened a Navy station here and a coaling station.
They created in the 1890s on Parris Island the largest dry dock in the United States. This is the period when the U.S. Navy was switching from sail to steam. All the navies of the world needed a coaling station. This was the principal coaling station, because of the railroad, for the Caribbean and South American U.S. fleets.
This would be the biggest dry dock south of Norfolk. In fact, it is the only dry dock south of Norfolk, Virginia, that's capable of taking these new modern battleships and these new modern armored cruisers. So this becomes, at this point, a strategic Navy base in that it provides coal, and it provides top-line support to the ships, and they can repair the hulls of even the biggest ships in the U.S. Navy. Following the Civil War, national strategy and emphasis in the United States shifted to recovery from war, and all of our coastal fortifications went into neglect. The military was busy taming the West, and coastal defenses became something that was no longer important. In the rest of the world, technology is moving forward, and they're developing these battleships, they're developing new high-quality artillery, and this is going on worldwide. And in 1885, President Grover Cleveland appointed the Endicott Board. This was headed by Secretary of War Endicott, William Endicott, and the board would meet and issue a report in 1886, and it said that the conditions of our coastal defenses were just unbearable. They cannot be allowed to stay like that. And they made recommendations for fortification and improvements. They identified 29 places that needed fortifications, and 11 of which were critical. In that list of 29, Savannah and Charleston are on the list, but Beaufort is not on the list. It'll take international events to bring Beaufort into the play of modern fort technology.
So the USS Maine was here on patrol and in the harbor, and while they were in the harbor several times, they entertained the local population. So the merchants and the social leaders and the political leaders of Beaufort were invited to come have lunch with the captain of the ship, Captain Sigsbee. And the officers got to know the people got to know the officers. The crew, which was large, would go ashore on payday and make friends with everybody in town. So it was a very social arrangement between the towns, Port Royal and Beaufort, and the ship. So the Maine left here, it went and reprovisioned, it refueled in Key West, and then went the 90 miles across to Havana into the harbor and blew up.
This inflamed the already hot passions both in Cuba and here in the United States. At that point, somebody in the War Department realized that we had this big dry dock, the only dry dock in the South that could take on and repair these big capital ships that were in our Navy. We were going to start operations against a power in the Caribbean, and this fort was totally undefended. And that's what put Fort Fremont on the map. We had to have a fort here to defend the coaling station and especially this big dry dock, as well as this fine harbor that's here.
And of course, that event, which killed 300 or more sailors on the ship, was very much followed by the local news media and very much lamented by the many friends that the crew had made here. The destruction of the USS Maine was a personal matter to Beaufort and to Port Royal Sound. And of course, it was the Spanish-American War and the attempt to defend this harbor again, which led to the creation of Fort Fremont. The United States declared war on Spain in April 1898.
And by early May, we had temporary batteries in place here, submarine mines were in place, and in the summer they would actually place the mines across the Beaufort River behind me. The temporary batteries were a temporary expedient. They were located to my left about 1,000 yards. They immediately began construction of what would become Fort Fremont. The large batteries would house the large guns. Battery 4 Nance, the rapid-fire guns, the smaller battery, was completed by June of 1898.
In 1898, everybody in town went to war. They had a naval militia unit, South Carolina Naval Militia Unit, and they were absorbed by the Navy. Many of them ran tugboats from here to New York to Key West, which was the principal support base, Tampa and Key West, for the U.S. Army operations in Cuba.
Peace was declared by the end of
Reconvening public facilities. We have two items coming out of executive session. Mr. Chairman, I might call on you.
Yes.
The first one?
I move that we recommend to council to authorize the county administrator to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with the town of Hilton Head for the sale and purchase of real property consisting of 68 Helmsman Way, 43 Jenkins Road, 70 Bagel Road, and 152 Hilton Head Parkway.
Okay. Motion is second. Second, okay. Discussion. Brittany, you want to tell us a little bit about just for the viewing public, what the four pieces of property are? Someone may not recognize the numbers, the addresses. If you'd be so kind.
Yes, sir.
Attorney Michael, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The properties in which the county owned are 70 Bagel Road and 152 William Hilton Parkway. These properties are the location of some parks that the county currently owns. We would be deeding those over to the town of Hilton Head. The town of Hilton Head, in return, will be deeding to us a portion of Helensman Way property that they own that is located underneath the flyover. In addition to that, they'd also be providing us the property in which the current Cross Island dock is located on. The third property that the town would be transferring to the county would be 43 Jenkins Road, which is approximately a little over an acre of land that's at the end of Jenkins Road, adjacent to the county pier.
And in actuality, there's no exchange.
There is no exchange of funds for this. It is to the benefit of both parties for us to consolidate some properties and be able to build some different infrastructure on each.
And this is a staff recommendation as negotiated between the two staffs. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, discussion on the land swap. Any objection to the land swap? Seeing no objection, this is approved as without objection. Thank you. Got another one there, sir?
Yes, I move that we recommend to council to authorize the county administrator to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with the city of Beaufort for the sale and purchase of real property with an address of 1505 North Street.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, open it up for discussion.
I will object, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a horrible waste of taxpayer money.
Okay, and describe a little bit too where this is, if you would, just so people that are watching may not know all these addresses. Thank you, Brittany.
1505 North Street is a property adjacent to two other lots that the county acquired last January, I believe. This property is located right behind the courthouse that is potentially, or in the near future, going to be occupied by the Sheriff's Department. And it consists of 0.3 acres. And the sales of the proceeds from the sale are going to be used at the Southside Park by the city of Beaufort.
Okay. Other comments? Okay, seeing none, are there any other objections besides Brian to this motion? Okay, York?
Okay, Chris.
And Chris. Okay, why don't we just call the roll for the record?
Good call.
Mr. President, made the motion.
Yes.
Howard, second, right?
Yes.
Okay. Chairman Passman?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Lawson?
Mark Lawson, yes.
Councilmember McGowan, he's not here anymore. Councilmember Somerville?
Yes.
Councilmember Hervashon?
No.
Councilmember Flewelling?
No.
Councilmember Dawson? He's not online anymore. Councilmember Glover?
No.
And Councilmember Rodman?
Yes.
5-3, the motion passes.
Motion carries. Okay. Just one comment from me as the chairman's wrap up. One of the things that we have open that we'd like to tidy up before year end is the facilities plan that was done, I guess, a year and a half ago. And so we're going to have a discussion at the October PFC, but it's something you may want to refresh your memories on ahead of time. And if you don't have the plan, I'm sure we can get you a copy of that. But essentially, there's two pieces to the potential discussion. One is, as the consultants put it together, there were kind of three alternatives or possibilities. So we can zero in on those. It would be good for us as a council to weigh in beforehand. And the other, it's kind of led to a possible discussion that we've been having on an alternative way to finance some of these types of things. It's kind of like a sale and lease back. So those two can go hand in hand. But for the time being, do take a little time, refresh your refresh your memory on the facilities plan, and we'll have a good discussion on that. Any other business to come before us?
Stu, may I make two quick announcements which have nothing whatsoever to do with public facilities? Number one is September is the Leukemia Awareness Month, and Carol and Harley Ruff are hosting a blood drive this Saturday, September 24th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 51 Sunset Boulevard, Ladies Island. And the second thing I want to mention is when we were talking about the setback or the lack of setback on the Butler Marine, I made this statement. I've made this statement many times actually, that was at the instance of the city of Beaufort, and I've since learned that was not entirely true, because it wasn't annexed. It was annexed in the city of Beaufort after the setback had already been established. The setback was as a result of an agreement between Beaufort County and the city of Beaufort some years ago. And that's, so I misspoke. I said it was actually City of Beaufort and Beaufort County jointly did it. Thank you.
Or we'll leave it out of the minutes that you misspoke.
Okay, thank you.
One other quick thing I forgot to mention when we have the Sea Island Parkway discussion, in separate conversations with both Eric and with Stephen Murray, it appears that there's some agreement we ought to do a charrette of some sort, work through the details, and that the city and the county would maybe go 50-50 on the cost of that thing.
We have the scope, and we're trying to establish dates.
Right, good. So I think that helps with that. I forgot to mention, I apologize. So we stand adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.